Robinson Crusoe, Part 2. Good morning, children. I am sure all of you are keeping fine and are happy at home. I am also sure that you have heard the first part of the story in the last class. You have understood this wonderful story of Robinson Crusoe, how he reached an island after a shipwreck. Now he is in the island, and let's see how he manages with his life. Robinson Crusoe hoped to escape from this island as early as possible because he wanted to reach England. He wanted to reach and meet his relatives and friends. He wanted to be back home. So he was waiting in the island, looking out for ships. If any ship that would come by, he can ask for help and perhaps go home safe. So he was always on the lookout for ships. But no ships came that way. So Robinson Crusoe was held up in the island. Not for just 1 month, not for 2 months, not for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. And the years went away. And he was getting so desperate to go back home. Sometimes he was losing hope of going home. And so he had to find his food entirely from the island. He had to make his own clothes. So Robinson Crusoe was a hard-working man, and he had a regular timetable. He was not at all lazy. From early in the morning till late in the night he worked. Most of the time he was also sad. He was all alone. He had no companion to talk to. So let's see how he spent his time on the island. Here is the island once again, which is known as Robinson Crusoe Island. So here you can see Robinson Crusoe and his parrot, whom he called Paul. They are good friends. He spends some time talking to Paul. He teaches Paul certain sentences and Paul starts talking. He would call Robinson Crusoe by name and make a lot of noise. So Robinson Crusoe felt that someone is near him. This gave him some kind of comfort. You can also observe the type of house that Robinson Crusoe lives in. This is made up of things and pieces of wood that were brought from the broken ship. I told you he had to live on the island for years. Now after 3 or 4 years passed, he also had developed his skill in pottery. Though he knew nothing about pottery, he tried his luck. He took clay, he mixed it with water, he gave shape with his own hands, and then he made different types of pots of different shapes and sizes. At first, he made many mistakes and many of the pots were broken easily. Later, he understood that if the pots were baked in fire, they would last long. So here is a picture of Robinson Crusoe baking his pots on the fire. This made the pots stronger, and he made different types of pots that later he would even make his own bread using this pot. Here is Robinson Crusoe's calendar. I told you that when he came to the island, he had a track of the day that he left on his voyage, and on the ship they were aware of the days. After he reached the island, the next day he brought pieces of wood and tied it across and made it his calendar. He took his knife and carved letters and numbers on this wood. He kept on making a mark on this calendar to denote days. So he could count the days, he could mark the months, and he was aware which day and which month it was. He knew how the years were passing. Robinson Crusoe was never idle. He took a long time to furnish his cave. You can see different tools and furniture in his room. With great difficulty, he prepared a table, a chair. He made racks to store his things. So in short, his cave was becoming like a comfortable home. This was not an easy work. With the limited tools that he had, he went down to the island, found trees, cut them down. Working so hard for many hours, he cut down the pieces of wood, shaped it, made it into proper furniture that he could use in his cave. And he made his cave a comfortable place for him to live in. His food was getting over and he was worried as to what to eat. He was used to eating bread and biscuits all these years. Now the things that were brought from the ships were getting over. One day he found some old bags that were brought from the ship. There was nothing in the bag, so he shook a bag outside his home and then he threw the bag away. After a few days, he was shocked to find some barley plants growing in front of his house. He was so happy to see the few barley plants. Then he understood that when he shook the bag away, there were some barley seeds that were lying there, and they fell to the ground and they started growing. So Robinson Crusoe looked after these barley plants and he was so glad to see the barley sprouting and the seeds growing. He collected the grains very carefully and then he planted it on another piece of land. He took care of them and in a few months' time he got lots more grains. Then he planted them again and again till he had a big field full of barley growing. And after 1 or 2 years, he was able to harvest a lot of barley and wheat. So you can see here the picture of Robinson Crusoe harvesting his barley and wheat. And since he had a lot of grains available from his field, now he wanted to store them in his cave. There were no proper vessels to store the grains, so he thought of making his own baskets. He went round the island and brought some wicker, and with the help of it he started making baskets. He made baskets of different sizes and shapes, and he gathered all the grains and he stored them in these baskets. After many months, he was having lots and lots of grains stored in his cave. So now it was not difficult for him to find his food. Then he got an idea of making bread. Now to make bread, first of all, he had to powder the wheat or the barley. He had no means of grinding it, but he worked very hard by digging a hole in a piece of wood, and then he would put these grains in this hole. Then he would pound it with another piece of wood, and slowly, with great difficulty, he powdered the grains, and with this powder he was able to make bread. So you can imagine how hard he worked. Since he was alone, he was not having many distractions. At other times, Robinson Crusoe walked along his island to explore the island. He would move from one place to the other. He found some lovely spots to stay in different seasons. So he had a summer home and a winter home, etc. on the island. And while walking along the island, he found wild grapes growing in one part of the island. He was very glad. He ate a few and he felt it very refreshing. So he started collecting the grapes for his use. He also collected some grapes and dried them in the hot sun. So after drying the grapes, you get what is known as currants. So he gathered these also in his baskets and kept in the cave. Here is a look at Robinson Crusoe's home. So you can see he was comfortable in his cave. He had his goats, he had his dog, Paul the parrot, cats, all these living creatures around him, which made him feel lighter at home. He would find his food also from fish. The sea is close by, he would go to the sea and he would fish. He would get a lot of fish which he would grill it on the fire. So life was going on in this way uninterrupted, and years passed by, years and years. Almost 15 years had passed and Robinson Crusoe was still on the island. Every day he was looking out for some help. He wished some ships came by. He wanted to go back to England. He wanted to live with his people, but he could not go. One day as he was walking along the island, he found a large footprint on the island. A large footprint of a man. Suddenly Robinson Crusoe was very scared. It is because Robinson Crusoe thought that he was all alone on the island. He had never seen another human being on the island before. And he wondered whose footprint it was. He compared the footprint with his own footprint, but he found the other footprint was larger than his own. So he was very much worried. He was very much worried because there were islands nearby and the people in the island were sometimes savages. He had read about them before. Savages are wild people who are like animals. They would also eat other human beings for their food. So Robinson Crusoe was very scared. He ran back to his home, fearing, and he was not coming out of his caves for many days, thinking that there is someone on the island. Always he would be walking with his gun, looking around for someone who is following him. Since he was worried and frightened, he turned to prayer. This gave him some comfort. He would sit and pray and ask God to protect him. In this way, he found some courage. After a couple of years, one day Robinson Crusoe was so shocked to see a boat full of savages coming to the island. From his cave, he observed a group of people coming to the island, and by hiding near a rock, he found the savages dancing on the island. He also found that they had brought some prisoners. 2 or 3 men were brought as prisoners and they were killing them. So suddenly, one of the prisoners started running towards the island to escape. This man came running to where Robinson Crusoe was. So Robinson Crusoe took his gun and ran in the direction where the cannibals were, and he started shooting them down. And hearing the bullet shots, many of the savages ran away, leaving this prisoner on this island. And the prisoner came to Robinson Crusoe and he fell at Robinson Crusoe's feet. So Robinson was very kind to him. He did not harm him. And the prisoner in sign language told him that he would be his slave forever. So Robinson Crusoe took this prisoner and named him Friday. He gave this name to him because it was on a Friday that Robinson Crusoe saved this prisoner. So Friday became Robinson Crusoe's companion, faithful companion. Friday loved Robinson Crusoe and worked for him, with him, and took care of Robinson Crusoe. He would help him with all the work at home, on the field, and walked with him all the time. Robinson Crusoe started teaching him his own language, that is English. After many months, Friday was able to talk to Robinson Crusoe in English. Robinson Crusoe and Friday tried to make a boat. they wanted to escape from this island. So Friday told him that he came from an island that was near, and on the island there were many people like him, and they were afraid that more cannibals would come to the island. So they wanted to escape from this particular island. They started making boats. You can also see Robinson Crusoe walking with Friday, and you can see so many animals in the island. As you know, Robinson Crusoe and Friday together reared many goats, and the milk was useful even in making cheese. They made plenty of cheese, so a lot of cheese, milk, all this was available, and the food was in plenty. You can also notice Robinson Crusoe's dress. This is made up of goat skin. So the skin of the goats were dried in the sun, because the clothes were not available there anymore, because they were on the island for many years. So he prepared his dress from skin of animals. One day another group of savages entered the island, and Robinson Crusoe and Friday together chased them out, and the boat that they brought to the island had 2 prisoners in it. And they released the prisoners, and Friday was amazed to see one of the prisoners that the savages had brought was his own father. This time they had caught his father and wanted to kill him. So Robinson Crusoe was very happy to see Friday meeting his father. And they told about the island, and they said that there was another shipwreck and many Spaniards were living on another island. So Robinson Crusoe and Friday, with the help of the Spaniard and Friday's father, made arrangements for the other Spaniards to come to his island, and there would be plenty of people in the island then. Robinson Crusoe was now happy that he could meet many people. He had some more people around him. He felt that he is not alone. Now he began to feel happy, thinking that he can also go back to his own country very soon. And as the days went by, they were observing the island. They were also waiting for ships to come by. They found a huge ship coming from a distance. So they waited. They could not go and meet them directly because they wouldn't know if they were enemies. They waited. By evening, some men came to the island, and Robinson Crusoe noticed that 3 men were held prisoners. The others were pushing them onto the island. So after leaving these 3 people on the island, the others got into the boat and got into the ship. Robinson Crusoe and Friday approached them, and then Robinson Crusoe understood that the men were from England, and the man who was sitting under the tree was the captain of the ship. And the other crew, the sailors in the ship, were quarreling with the captain, and they made them prisoners and brought to the island. Now the crew was trying to escape with the big ship to places that they wanted to go. So Robinson Crusoe promised the captain that he would defeat the crew in the ship and take the ship for themselves. So Robinson Crusoe and Friday went round the ship, got into the ship, and locked all the cabins where the crew were, and held the ship, and the captain was now able to take the ship wherever he wanted. The captain agreed to take Robinson Crusoe and Friday to England in return for his kindness. So the other crew were brought to the island and left them there, and now Robinson Crusoe and Friday made all the preparations to leave the island. Robinson Crusoe was now very happy that he could go back to his home after 27 years of stay on the island. But he was also very heartbroken to leave his beloved island. He loved his island so much because he had worked so hard on this island. He was very familiar with every nook and corner of this island. He considered himself the king of the island. And so the other prisoners, the crew that were brought from the ship, begged his pardon, and they promised to live on the island as his faithful subjects. They called Robinson Crusoe their king and governor, and they promised to look after the island well for the coming years. And so Robinson Crusoe, along with Friday, boarded a boat and reached the ship. The ship left for England in 1686. In the beginning of 1687, they reached England, and he found that all his relatives were dead. He had very few relations who are alive in his country, but he met all of them. He was at least very happy to have reached his own hometown. After a few years, he got married. He had 3 children. Then he thought of paying a visit to his own island once again. He also took along with him some people who were ready to work in that island. So he visited his village. He visited his island once again. And he was very pleased to see that the island was very well looked after by other Spaniards who were nearby and the crew whom Robinson Crusoe had made to stay there. They received him with warmth. They declared Robinson Crusoe as their governor and promised to look after the island beautifully for him. So this is the story of Robinson Crusoe in short. I hope all of you have understood the story, and I also hope you have enjoyed the story, and I recommend this book for reading. It is full of adventures. It shows how Robinson Crusoe became a self-sufficient, self-reliable man in his difficult times. It also teaches us the same values of hard work, of becoming self-reliant. We must develop all our talents through hard work. It will give us a lot of satisfaction in life. It will make us successful people. So do enjoy reading this book if you get a chance. Thank you.